This exercise is going to be form study, a massing study. The idea here is the first cube is kind of the envelope of a building we might be thinking about, and the second is taking elements of that and carving it until it represents some kind of an idea or concept we have. And then finally a little more refinement and the addition of walls and glazing systems to kind of define it as more of a piece of architecture. So I'm going to go ahead and close this one off, this drawing off, and we'll start with a fresh one, and we'll work through this exercise. Close. And I have a file open already. It is called Mass Start. I'll make sure that this is available on Blackboard. And we start out with just a generic floor as a platform to work on. And if I click on this, you'll see it's 500 feet by 800 feet. So it's a very ample sized platform. And we'll click on a 3D view here so you can get an idea of what we have. So the first thing is to create some kind of a solid. In this case, many times Revit talks about making massing models, and they have a mass element. But we're going to use the generic model element instead of the mass element because it actually renders better in a form study like this. A mass element has a sense of translucency to it, and I think this is just a more interesting way to work. But you're free to experiment with the other elements also. So let's just start with a component. So under architecture, I'm going to go to component. I'm in a 3D view right now, and we're going to do model in place. We'll swing down here until we can find a generic model, and I'll select that. It asks for naming, and we're not really concerned about a naming convention right now. First thing we're going to make is an extrusion. Actually, the only thing we'll make are extrusions, just to keep it simple. And once I select the extrusion tool, I get my typical drawing tools. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a rectangle and craft out a rectangle here. And I'll zoom in with my center mouse button or scroll, and I'll just change the dimensions here. So it's 150 feet by 150 feet. Selecting those and then typing in the new values. And we'll complete that drawing mode. And you'll notice we're not up to the height that we want. So I'm going to just draw this up. And you saw when I went by it, it actually highlighted the level line. But we're not going to concern ourselves because that level line is not high enough yet. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this model off. And right away I want to click to the south elevation so we can look at it from the front. And you can see how I've arbitrarily pulled that cube up. We have a level line. And I'll zoom in over here so you can see that. And it's level 2, which is going to be the top of the building. We're only going to have 2 levels in for this exercise. So I'm going to go ahead and select that 45 feet and make that 150 feet also. So that way we'll have a cube. And I'll do zoom extent so we move back out again, ZE. And then I'll grab that cube and pull it up until it touches that. So now we know we have a 150 foot by 150 foot by 150 foot cube. And went back to the 3D view, so we're getting a little bit of play of shadow and light to do form, and a little discussion about the rendering setting that I've started with. I'm going to go and select this view template and click the R, and I'm going to turn it off. I've already got a pre-designed rendering template that comes with this drawing, and I'm just going to change this to none for now and apply that, because you could start a drawing and have it look like a wireframe. Hidden line. This is really kind of like a SketchUp mode where we're seeing nice lines portraying as the edges. And there's really nothing wrong with this rendering mode, except that I think that these lines aren't accurate portrayals about how architecture sometimes feels with the play of light on it. So I've changed the settings a little bit. Also, there are all kinds of other rendering techniques. But the one that I've set up, R, is actually just a variation on a realistic rendering. And I just turn the edges off. I make sure that we have both the shadows turned on. There's always chances to adjust this lighting any way you might see fit. And I typically turn the sky on. And it looks something like that. And then I give it I save it as a template. And the reason for that is anytime I make a new drawing, I can assign that template view to it. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and give it the R value that I've already saved. And you can go back and change that anytime you want, because these are all the same settings that are within this palette over here in the rendering. I'm sorry about that, in the rendering palette. So I'll click OK for now. So let's go ahead now and start carving up our mass. This cube could represent the zoning requirements, the setbacks along the lot lines and other elements, the basic bulk of the building that we would want to create. And we'll go ahead and grab it and move it over. So I'm going to just grab the copy and move tool, touch that front edge, and just drag it over. And you notice I'm locked or constrained into a left and right and east and west orientation. And I'll move it over. Well, I just moved it over kind of arbitrarily at 184 feet. Let me undo that a minute. Let's just do that more logically. So I'll grab it again, grab the corner, and I'll move that over 180 feet. And the first thing I'm going to do is I don't want to lose the bulk, or at least the footprint of this. So I'm going to go ahead and let's say I'll just take this and shrink it way down. So it's just a little footprint on the ground. And we really lost that other element, the other part of the cube. So I'll just copy another mass of the cube over. So I'll grab that, and I'll grab it at that corner. I'll move it over here until it's at that same corner again. And then in keeping with kind of the way that building form I've started with is made, I'll just stretch that back until it's just a thin section of wall. I'm trying not to make too specific decisions with forms and shapes, because I do want to work in a kind of a flexible conceptual mode at this point. Let's just grab let's grab that rectangle again. I'll grab it on the corner, I'll move it over until it touches the other corner. Let me just zoom in so you can see that. So I grabbed it. Let me undo that a minute. I'll grab this element. Let me make sure I don't have two of them here. Just hit delete. No, I don't. And I'm doing Control Z to get it back. I'm going to select that, grab the copy and move, grab it at the bottom corner and move it over until it touches the corner again. So now that's touching that exact surface. Now let's just play with pulling it back a little bit here. Maybe we'll pull it down a little. And I'm going to pull it up as if there was a podium level, a first floor level that's really tall and open underneath. And then I'm just going to stretch this out. Now we need an element to maybe catch that, support that building mass as we've done in the original drawing. So I'm going to grab I'm going to use that box again, that generic model, copy it over, grab it at the bottom corner. I'll zoom in here. I'm grabbing it at that bottom corner, and I'll slide it over and touch it to that one. And now that bottom thing could actually be deleted later on, because we really define the whole outline of our building. But I'm going to leave it there for now. I'm going to pull this back so we get a little bit of an exposure of that other cube. Now we have another window or glazing element that goes across that center area. But before we do that, let's start to take a look at our model from another perspective so we can get an idea of what's happening with our formwork. So I'm going to go to the site view, and I'm going to set up a camera. I'm going to go to View, Camera, and I'm going to come down here kind of at the sidewalk level, walking around, and take a shot back at our building by clicking on the camera and then pulling a view off. And then I'm going to use my scroll wheel to zoom out a little bit, and these crop boxes appear, and they're going to allow me to kind of manipulate the view shed here until I can see my whole building. And I want to see the play of light on it, so I'm going to go to the view template and select that R, my rendering setting, and apply that. And now I get that idea of what my mass elements are. So now to further experiment with what we're doing, let's go ahead and I'll go to the south elevation, and let's say we're going to put in a window area now. So what I'm going to do is I really almost want this to be in the same area, but I'm just going to copy this over just a little bit. So let's say we'll come over 12 feet. I'm going to peel this back. I don't want it to escape the envelope of the building. but I do want it to like kind of be smaller than that mass. And it's a little hard to work it from this view, so I'm going to slip over now to the 3D view. You can see it's not protruding out of the front because this other element is in the way. But I don't want to pull it out any further because that's as far out to the street level, to that edge. So let's go ahead and, well actually I can't pull it out because it's already shorter than the other one, excuse me. So I could just pull this out a little bit. And I could pull it out this way also. And I could say I don't want to quite break that other wall element. Just pull it back a little bit till I get that little reveal of edge. You could be doing this 100 different ways. I'm just trying to use the idea of how we can take those cubes and kind of manipulate them a little bit. And then we'll slip back over to that 3D view so we can see what we have. It looks a little aggressive the way this is sticking out to me, so I'll just pull this back just a hair. I might even want to pull it back a little bit farther so I get that kind of a reveal of that edge of this other wall so it's not hidden from view. And that's just a matter of what you might have as far as an intent about what you're trying to create. Anyway, for the sake of this exercise, let's say we really created our massing elements in a way that's something that pleases us. So I'm going to go to the south elevation now, and I'm going to grab that whole thing and move it over one more time. And we're going to look at, and I'll move that over that same 180 feet. And we'll go to a 3D view. And now we can actually start applying different kinds of surfaces to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn these into walls. So I'm going to go to Architecture, grab my Wall tool, and I'm going to grab Wall by Face. And I have in this some pre-made surfaces. One is just a generic wall that's light colored and one that's dark colored. So let's go ahead and use the dark one for now. And I'll go ahead and select a couple of these surfaces. And if you notice what I'm doing, I'm really just allowing as I roll over them, it highlights the surface that I want to select. And I select it. This one is in the back. We're not seeing it from that view, but I'll go ahead and pick it. And we know there's one in the back also, so we can go ahead and select that also. And because we don't want these, so I just now gone and clicked the Modify tool, so I'm no longer in the wall selection. We know we don't want this conceptual mass, but I'm going to click on it so you can see it. It says Generic Model. We're going to go ahead now and delete that because we no longer need it. And I'll go ahead over to this one and select it. It says Generic Model, and I'll go ahead and delete it. So now those no longer exist in a model form. So we need a few more surfaces to create. I'm going to go ahead and grab the Wall tool again, Architectural, and we're going to apply the lighter surface now to, I'm sorry, I selected Architectural Wall, but I meant to select Wall by Face. And I've got the generic modified version, and I'll go ahead and select the front face here and the front face here, and I'll grab the back face there, and I'll go ahead and select the conceptual mass now and just delete that out. And you can see we still have that other conceptual mass in here. And let's just, we could do a lot more detailing, but I wanted to just move this along relatively quickly so you get the concept. Let's add some glazing now to this surface. So I'm going to use storefront glazing. So I'm going to go to Wall, Wall by Face, and we'll do the drop down until we see storefront glazing. So I'm picking that just because it has a large deep mullion, so it's a little clearer in the rendering. And I'll select the front face here. And that'll take a while to divide off because of the amount of glazing elements that are involved. And I'll select this surface. And that's also moving through there right now. We would really trim that back a little bit. Now let me go ahead and tab in here and delete the mass again, the generic model that we created. And that's taking just a second to grab that and regenerate it. Oh, I know I had the, I'm sorry, I've got to undo that. I had the wall tool. I was just adding glazing systems to those other elements. So let me step back out of that. Cancel out of that. And I'm going to grab this generic model again. Now I want to make sure I have the modify tool selected. Grab that mass and delete it by hitting the delete key. I lost this one side element for the glazing, so I'm going to do Control Z, and I'm going to add another wall element on that side. And I'll grab wall by face, storefront, and apply it there, just so it wraps around that corner. And then I'm going to make sure I select the modify so I don't apply any more faces. I'm going to grab that generic model and delete it. Now we just have our glazing over that front area. We don't have any openings through the walls. So first of all, let's just take a look at what we've got in a 3D view that we've set up. And remember, we moved down the road a little bit, so now we have another building that's even closer than the one we originally set. And that's way too close, so let's go ahead now and I'm going to go to the 3D view and delete that. We no longer need it. I'm going to go to the site view, and I'm going to set up another street view. I'm going to go to View, Camera. I'm going to get out here a little bit so we don't have too sharp a perspective. And let's get ourselves set up nicely here. And we'll go ahead and apply that R rendering to it. Okay, so what we don't have now is that idea of transparency behind this glazing system. So we really need to modify these wall surfaces, and it's really quite easy to do. I'm going to go to the south elevation. We're going to cut an opening in that piece of wall. And we're going to do it casually at this point. I'm going to grab this tool and double click on it. I've grabbed the wall. I'm going to double click and it'll turn pink for me. If I've done it, double click it. I've got it now into an editing mode. And I'm going to add some lines and take some lines out. So I'm going to use the line tool, grab up on the top. And I'm really not completely concerned that this is perfect, but I'm touching surfaces that are indicating. And we have a line here. If I highlight it, it goes through the whole thing, and we really need to pull that back. So I'm going to pull this until it makes contact there. It's going to give me a warning because I don't have a line down there yet, but I'm just going to unjoin those elements for now. And I need to add one more line, the one I took out. So I'll come and zoom in here so you can see that. I'm going to grab it there and pull it down. And now I have like a U-shaped element with a big cutout in it. And I'll click off on that. And then we'll go back to that 3D view. And you can see now this is highlighted in blue. So you can see how we have that idea of transparency through that. Now there's all kinds of ways we could have manipulated and added surfaces there. But that's just a quick run through about taking basically a mass and then carving and playing with objects to quickly come up with a basic form concept. And I invite you to do something similar, but manipulate the forms in something that you might find interesting.